The essence of Samadhi in Raja Yoga of Patanjali. Samadhi is an almost effortless state of a clear, collected mind for many hours in the complete absence of thoughts, and any other disturbances, and changeable intentions of the mind. While at the stage of dhyana, thoughts can still sometimes slip in the form of interference, and the degree of holding the clarity of mind has not yet been trained well enough. In the state of Samadhi, the quality of both the absence of thoughts, and the clarity, collectedness, of mind are brought to perfection by many years of daily practice of meditation. Another fundamental difference between Samadhi and dhyana is the quality of mind control. While in dhyana this control is clearly noticeable and relatively coarse, as Samadhi is practiced, it becomes so minimal and effortless over time that being in Samadhi itself becomes almost a natural state that does not need to be maintained by special or any obvious efforts. Buddhism teachers also talk about this when teaching shamatha. It is important to note here that the daily practice of Samadhi leads to a gradual energy buildup. At first, this will lead to the development of vijnanamaya kosha, buddhi, the next cognitive tool after the mana's mind. This will be manifested by a clarification of consciousness, when it becomes much easier to understand various situations, and find answers to many questions. Such a person can easily self-learn a variety of new things, as well as invent, create, etc. Subsequently, when the duration of continuous stay in a state of Samadhi reaches several hours, the most interesting thing will begin, the gradual development of Anandamaya kosha, Sambhogakaya, which is associated with gaining superconsciousness and siddhis. This is what distinguishes saints from ordinary people. It is the yogic Samadhi, along with the Buddhist shamatha, is what should be called meditation itself in the generalized sense that is put into it in the West, a psychotechnique that causes an accelerated transformative development of consciousness. Talking and reading about Samadhi is much easier than practicing it daily with the right quality and duration. The main difficulty here is that in the first year, and even longer, of such meditation practice there will be very few intermediate results of any kind, especially in the spiritual realm. Moreover, all this time a person will not become more moral, kind and spiritual, because all this requires at least several years of life experience with a well-developed vijnanamaya kosha, when awareness and tracking of the full karmic cycles of certain events becomes available, and then life turns into one continuous oriental parable. A very strong motivation is needed, see subchapter 5.1, to regularly continue the right practice of meditation. And all this time, it is necessary to carefully observe the regime of such practice no less strictly than, for example, the regime of sports training in order to achieve high results in international competitions. The saintly teacher who taught Swami Rama, Baba Dharamdas, aka Bengali Baba, had this motivation, and as a result he achieved sainthood after he left his position as a judge in British India and went to the Himalayas where he meditated for many years. As already mentioned in the introduction section, in order to be able to achieve yogic realization, holiness, and consciousness of a Buddha, enlightened one, it is necessary to gradually increase the duration of Samadhi meditation to 3 hours or longer, and then continue to practice it daily for 3 hours or longer. Meditation is not a talent or even a skill. This is primarily an energy build-up/pumping, and if the practice of Samadhi is stopped even for just 1 to 2 weeks, the meditator will have to start the meditation practice from the very beginning, which is confirmed both by the words of Buddhist teachers, and by the Nero headset, see chapter 4. From the point of view of Buddhist teachers, 3-hour shamatha, an analog of Samadhi, can be trained in about 1.5 to 3 years of seclusion, solitary retreat. In the most optimal case, it takes at least 6 months. But in itself, achieving a 3-hour, or lasting 4 hours and 36 minutes, as the holy teacher of Swami Rama said, Samadhi is just reaching the finish line of spiritual self-realization, which can last from 6 months to decades, after which it is the turn of the daily practices of Samadhi and, subsequently, yogic samyamas, in Buddhism, vipassana practices, which allow you to gain the transcendental wisdom of direct awareness of the essence of things through the use of fundamentally new, incredibly insightful and incredibly powerful cognitive tools, vijnanamaya kosha/buddhi. and Anandamaya Kosha/Sambhogakaya, gradually developing as a result of the indirect energy effect of the daily practice of samadhi. The acquisition of this transcendental wisdom and enlightenment has nothing to do with the mental processes of the mind manas and mental conclusions, and this is directly stated in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, 1.49, 3.5, and the texts of Buddhism. 49. Prajna, wisdom, attained in higher states of consciousness differs from that attained by conjectures and proofs relating to the particular. 3.5. After mastering this, that is samyama, comes prajna, the light of wisdom. The state of samadhi is non-religious. By itself, samadhi/shamatha meditation is just a psychotechnique, devoid of any religious implication. In Raja Yoga, if there is a religious connotation, it is minimal and refers rather to late additions and corrections of ancient texts. Attempts to attribute yoga to Samkhya have been known for a long time, but Samkhya is still a philosophy, one of the key ones in Hinduism, while yoga is a practical teaching that allows self-development in the most direct and fastest way. Buddhism is not considered a religion by many of its followers. They perceive it as a non-religious practical teaching for spiritual development. 1.5 or even 2,000 years after the appearance of Buddhism, Lamaism arose from it with its undoubted religious form, but the teachings of the Buddha and Lamaism are still not the same thing. The practice of samadhi/shamatha does not require the adoption of any new religion or the rejection of the old one, if any. Meditation itself is just a psychotechnique, the requirements and properties of which are quite unambiguously determined by the potentially identical structure of the consciousness of all people, which differs only in the degree of development of its individual aspects for each human being personally. It is precisely for this reason of sameness of truly effective practices of self-development the meditation is devoid of any religious implication, like, for example, anatomy. Any claim by any religion to a monopoly or superiority in meditation is completely untenable, just as any claim, if there were any, by some general education school that their multiplication table is more correct than in other schools. Samadhi/shamatha meditation proper is orthogonal, disjoint, to everything the mind has encountered before. For this reason, in principle, it cannot conflict with any religious ideas of a person, since it has no points of contact with the dogmas, and postulates inherent in religions, and the stereotyped perception of the world. Of course, if some religious rituals are artificially positioned under the guise of meditation, then they may conflict with the rituals of other religions. But in itself, the psychotechnique corresponding to samadhi/shamatha meditation does not need any rituals, and any religious implication. This publication is adapted excerpts from Subchapter 2.2 Samadhi in Raja Yoga of Chapter 2 Meditation in Raja Yoga, Dhyana, Samadhi, and Samyama of my book Meditation in Raja Yoga, Buddhism and Neurophysiology. A practical guide. With conclusions about the essence of Samadhi, and without most of reviews of different primary sources and Sanskrit dictionaries, which are given in this subchapter. You can learn more about real meditation practice in Raja Yoga and Buddhism, as well as the use of neuro headsets in meditation practice, from my book. I am Ukrainian, and I lived in various Hindu ashrams, and at Buddhist monasteries in India for more than 7 years, of which 5 of them never left India, and was probably the first in the sea to receive individual sannyasa diksha on May 19, 2004 from the Mahamandals were, Chairman, of the Hindu monastic line Juna Akara, once known as Dada Akara and Bhairavi Akara. During this time, in different parts of India, I was lucky enough to communicate with 5 miracle-working saints, 2 of whom were little known, and therefore relatively accessible for frequent communication. None of these miracle workers had anything to do with the monastic orders of India.